Bam. That was good timing. Hit him with the fucking karate chop.
You just did it. I just told you.
Oh.
You did not say the F word, and you just did it.
Dude, I can't be contained, bro.
Literally before the show, I told Taylor, I said, hey, dude,
Can we
you can't
end
say...
it and restart it?
12 seconds.
I said, we can't say it in the first 30 seconds or it dings the show for ads, and Taylor just lets it rip. Before you did last time, maybe 5 seconds in, just F-bomb.
Damn. Oh, here he is.
Oh.
What's up, guys?
I was not supposed to say the F word within 30 seconds of the show starting so that we didn't get dinged for having ads. And I slipped up.
He made it 3.7 seconds.
Oh man. What's your limit? What are you allowed? When does the muzzle come off?
I think after the 30-second mark, but totally slipped my mind.
Nice.
Oh well.
We could just run 30 seconds of dead air if you like, if you can't help yourself.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough with him. So what's up with you, dude? Easy day today, recovery day.
Yeah, Thursdays are like my only day off. I swim in the morning, but because I do 50-meter lanes, and it's only open from like 6 to 8 for 50s. So I go like first thing in the morning early, and then so it kind of feels like a full day off because I'm done by 8 a.m. So I'm just like, get to kick it for us today. So I kind of schedule all my other stuff during Thursdays, calls or errands or things I have to do. So doing laundry, doing like normal life stuff because I put it off for the rest of the week and pile it up for Thursdays.
What's the male equivalent for 40-pound dumbbells? Like if females have 40-pound dumbbells, males 60s or 65s?
I mean, I'd probably go 65s.
So we did this workout this morning. It was 15 devil's press, 300-meter swim, 30 dumbbell thrusters, 300, 30 dumbbell thrusters, 300, 15 devil's press. And it looked pretty panicky after the sets of 30.
So it's four swims?
3 swims. Devil's press.
Meters.
Yeah, devil's press.
So you start and finish on the dumbbell.
Yeah, devil's press. Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
And sorry, how many devil's press?
15.
It's the devil's press were irrelevant. It's the thrusters.
Yeah, his thrusters were really bad. And the swim, we went to this open water place that I used like a rangefinder a long time ago, and I thought it was going to be 100 out and back. And I got there, and I was like, oh,
it's more. That's what it's like at the lake when I swim in open water too. You kind of eyeball and you're like, I don't know. And then my watch, I'm not sure how it is for. It has an open water setting, but I don't know how accurate it is. And sometimes I just go out and you do the first swim, and I come out and I check my watch and I'm like, it might. Usually I try to go more on time because of that. I'm like, is it, if I'm trying to swim, 400 meters, is it like, are we looking at 8 minutes, or did I just do 10-minute swim? And now we're like, I don't really know how far I swam. But yeah, the thrusters, I did a workout not that long ago with very similar, except it went devil press, thruster, push press, and it was only 3. Nice. It was 4 swims and 3 dumbbell. Yeah. And it was lighter dumbbells, but it was I know definitely the swim after the thrusters was the one where I was like,
Michelle was getting it. I was paddleboarding like next to her. She's getting the water. She's like,
you're just heart rate. And then also like your triceps and your arms, just like devil's press is like, it's a bit smoother. It's a bit slower. Like it just doesn't, it's annoying and it takes time, but it doesn't quite, spicy. It doesn't have treat you the same as the thrusters do. And I felt the same. The push press at the end, you're just like rattling them off, like breathing super fast. And you get in the water, you're like, okay. Takes you like a good couple of minutes swimming to get back to normal.
I mean, I know I wonder, you guys probably do too. It's been, not counting 2020 because the field was so small, it's been since the beach, right? It's been since the swim, kettlebell thruster, burpee, that there's been like a mixed modal swim workout at the games, right? I don't count last year's because it's just monostructural for both. So I wonder how many, it seems like a lot of athletes are expecting something like you're talking about and like Taylor's talking about, that if there is a swim, that it's like some CrossFit. Like
I think everybody's been wanting it and expecting it for a long time. But I think that part of the problem is it's a bit of a logistical concern. And there's also some question as to, what can you safely do when you're all wet and things like that. And there are some concerns around that. Like, are you going to put a heavy barbell overhead? Like, probably not. Right. I think if I went there and they told me that that's what we're going to do, I might put my hand up and be like, that's a bad idea. But, that's why I think even that one in 2020, when they used the slam ball, say, even instead of using a heavy dumbbell, which is effectively what it was, because it wasn't a slam ball. Like, a slam ball is not a movement you can do because you're just going to pick it up and drop it. Like, the harder you slam it, you're burning energy for no reason, right? It's not a slam ball. It was like a ground to overhead with the D ball.
Right.
But the D ball is a little safer implement overhead than a handle. I think that's just got metal on it and stuff. So I think that was a really cool event. And we all wish we could have done that one, because it's probably the coolest swim workout we've seen since the beach. But I think, we've been kind of wanting it, but there's like, if we're at the pool again, I think that they're worried about wrecking the tile too and things like that. Right. And like, what can you do? But it would be nice to see. I think it's if nothing else, it's a fun way to train it. Like, I have a lot more fun doing swim workouts that have those aspects to it, rather than just like, do a little beach entry and then I swim for a bit and then I get out and I run and then I swim and then I run and then I get on the paddleboard and then I swim again. And like, I did yesterday, 2 days ago, Tuesday, I did a like swim paddle workout where it was like 400 meters, you'd swim, then you'd paddle the same distance. And then every round you'd do a different position on the paddle. So like starting with prone, then kneeling, then standing, and just like, it's like, it was fine. It's like fun, I guess, but it gets a little bit tedious doing that. How many different ways can you do a run paddle or a run swim? Right. And it's, I think that
as the first workout.
Yeah. We hopefully will get a little bit more freedom for that. I don't know why, in the past when we were at the lake, why we couldn't have just rolled out mats in the parking lot and like thrown some things down. And you could easily do like dumbbell squats or something like that. Like, there may be, even if there's question about safety for certain things overhead, there's a lot you can do without going overhead. Like, you do a bunch of dumbbell cleans or do a bunch of whatever. Like, there's tons of stuff you can do.
Do you think you're going to see any single modality to start the weekend? Do you anticipate single modality to start the weekend prior to the cuts? Do you want it? I think that I don't think we're going to see. So you mean single modality, like a full score for just one thing? Ish. Yeah. To a degree, I'm thinking like single modality as just one thing, but also including like a CrossFit total or a run, swim, run, where there's different movements, but it's all monostructural based or all weightlifting based.
Right. So like last year, would you call the shuttle to overhead a single modality?
No. I
see. I would. By that criteria, I would. It was 100 points for running. It was 100 points for shoulder to overhead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Then yes, but including that.
So that's the question is like, does that count? That was technically 2 events, but
yeah.
I think it's still a fairly CrossFit-y and like interval style. Like, there was some nuance to it. It wasn't as simple as what you like row 1K or something like that. Right. So I think maybe we'll see some stuff like that. The bike to work, like some people could look at that and be like, that was pretty monostructural, but anybody who did it will tell you that the gymnastics was a lot more valuable than you might've thought going in. And like that second round, when you started doing chest to bars, it was like, you came off, and if you were super lactic in your arms, it took a while to feel comfortable on the bike again. And like people who were smoother on the chest to bars didn't fight that on the last round of biking and maybe got right into their speed after a lap or two. So I think there's like, we'll see. Looking at what Bosman did last year, it would kind of surprise me to see very single modality stuff. I think he likes to have complexity. Sometimes, in my opinion, unnecessarily so, but that's one man's opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone wants to talk about the cuts and the implications for the athletes themselves. We all think about it more from a programming standpoint, right? It's not only important for Thursday to Friday to stand alone as their own CrossFit games, but in my opinion, it really breaks it up into 3 different competitions. So you have Thursday and Friday, then you cut. So Thursday and Friday need to be well-rounded. You need to make sure who's strong, or at least maybe who's not weak, that, who has good endurance, who has good skills, whatever. But then to me, based on the order of the workouts, if you have, let's just say Saturday is really gymnastics heavy, and then Sunday is just going to be heavy, like back 9 type workouts. Well, if you're just one of those dudes that didn't get to do the Sunday workouts, you're going to get cut unnecessarily. So it's almost like Saturday has to be really, really, really well done, because you're about to cut 10 really good people just to have them do maybe 3 workouts at the end of the weekend.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Taylor.
I was just going to ask, do you think 20 to 30 is really, really good and relevant by Saturday? I guess you, Pat, JR, either of you?
So I think JR's point is why cuts shouldn't exist at the games. I think that there's too many, it takes away too many aspects of competition for what it adds. To me, it doesn't add much. I know that there's an argument to be made about, it makes it a little more exciting. People's backs are against the wall. Like, people are competing like their backs against the wall regardless. Like, there's money on the line. There's things on the line. Like, if you're an athlete who's on the games floor, you're trying your best. Or you're like, and yeah, there's maybe like a little, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a little bit of extra fire, because like, frankly, like, you're going to do whatever you can. If anything else, it might force mistakes. But the reality is, like, so last year's events, your example is a reasonably good one about timing of events. That makes a huge, huge difference. So last year, what were Laura Horvath's Sunday finishes?
Back 9, I would imagine, was back 9. I would imagine
she won the back 9. She won Alpaca, really, and I think she took like a third, maybe
on Jackie Pro,
on the Jackie Pro. So you're talking like, if that's someone who is a stronger athlete and that sort of thing hasn't been tested as much, or the order of events just happens to fall a certain way where their strength is there. If that athlete is in, 18th place, or, let's say they're in 21st place, they get cut right before that happens. Those finishes would put them up to like 11th, maybe even in the top 10.
Yeah.
That is massively significant, not just in terms of placing, but like that money fucking pays you.
Yeah, money.
A ton. So like that's where it's just like, I have a hard time justifying it. If the order of events plays any impact on the leaderboard, that's, that's not great from a fairness perspective. We're asking people to take a different test. Some people are taking a full test, some not so much, but you're grading them on the same scale. So that looking at the cutting system, what it does is it basically kind of invalidates anybody from 20th place, 21st place onward. And we get this sense that like all that matters is finding like the top people in the right order. We don't really care about the order of everybody else. Like, as long as maybe the top 3 are in the appropriate order, everybody else is just sort of whatever, which just shouldn't be the case. Like, opportunities don't fall that way. A top 10 finish is massively significant. If you're a rookie and you even have a top 20 finish, that's super significant. Like, so I don't love it. The changing scoring tables make a big difference. The order of events make a big difference. It's just super challenging. And I think it also handcuffs the programming a bit. So now all of a sudden I can't test certain things almost at all, because I can't test them in the first part of the competition because it'll skew the cut too significantly. I can't maybe do certain single modality tests or very, very specific tests that I want to do. And you'll be heavily criticized if some of that stuff comes up too early. And then post cut, suddenly there's these specialist events and but the specialist has been cut. And I think there's just, it doesn't add enough for me. And so I don't know. I'm like always defensive of the athlete perspective as well. So I think it's like, the guys in 20th to 30th to 40th place, they still matter. And those are oftentimes what's happening is we're cutting the athletes from some of the geographical regions that we're trying to grow the sport in. So like, we're just sort of like, we're on one hand, we're saying like, yeah, we want to grow these communities in Africa and in Asia and whatever. And then we're just chopping them off at the knees immediately. And it's just like, okay, you say one thing and do another. It's tough. So I don't know. I mean, I think it makes it a tightrope walk for programming. And I think that if you just knew everyone was going to take every test, you'd be able to program a little more freely. But now you can't quite as much.
Yeah, because I mean, as close as it was in 2019 toward the end, and as much as we could dive into the placement of those events and the events that were on Saturday night and on Sunday that a lot of you guys didn't get to do and didn't get to maybe punish other athletes in the top 10 for poor finishes. I always think about that year and think about something like that split triplet. And I think about like you and Brent on the pegboard dumbbell workout and thinking to myself, like, I wonder what would have happened on that workout. Would Noah and Matt have still kind of finished where they were? And like BKG, would they still be pulling everyone along? Or like, could you or Brent have won that? Could you have taken points away from either of them? Could you have made the standard really, really interesting? But we'll never know those things, because I think that year, above all years, the order of the workouts and when they did the cuts just played a significant role to the top 10.
And I also think going to 10 instead of 20 is still is extra huge, significant in that respect, right?
Yeah. I watched Dave's, like when they announced it, I initially was all my thinking was in line with what you were initially saying, Pat. And then I watched Dave's week in review and I let his explanation kind of like swoon me towards, I guess it's okay. But I hearing you say it again and hearing your perspective, I agree. I don't think the benefits, like the viewership benefits, and he used the argument of, oh, now we can take the handcuffs off with programming. But your perspective,
yeah, you shouldn't.
You have handcuffs. Yeah, you shouldn't. You have handcuffs in the early part of the event as well. And then,
so I think one of Dave's comments that he tends to present in this is that, well, when we have a smaller field, it allows us to do more interesting things with the programming.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, but we haven't seen it. Every time he says that, we don't see it. Even in 2019, when we had 10 people, perfect opportunity to do some really cool stuff. And they did what? Toes to ring and assault bike, burpees to ring and overhead squats. Yeah. They swam a kilometer, paddled a kilometer, all things we could have easily done with larger fields.
A big field, especially the swim.
There wasn't anything in there that wasn't doable with a larger field. I think what it does do is it gives their team a bit of a break, which, I can understand that, but there's, it just becomes a bit of a priority shift of like, I don't think it improves the competition. Yeah. So I will say that fairly adamantly, and I'll say it until the day I die. I don't think it adds to anything or improves the competition. But are there other considerations? Surely there are, and there's the ones that we're less aware of. But that's kind of my perspective on it.
He mentions bottom athletes towards the end of the weekend getting drug along, and I wonder. I mean, you've been at the top of the sport almost, essentially since your first year, towards the top of the field. Do you ever see that, or do you ever? I feel like you're so focused in competition, it's hard for you to see. Potentially, I don't know, but do you think some of those bottom athletes at the end of the weekend, or even at the start, there's that category of athlete that's like, I made the game, that was the huge hurdle, that was the big climb. Now what? I kind of just show up and participate. Do you think that exists? Because in his argument, he almost hints to that or alludes to that.
I think it does. And I think that there's always, even great athletes who are having a really bad weekend, you watch people who don't look like themselves, right? Yeah. And I've been in positions where, you're on a podium hunt on the last day and certain workouts come up, and then you look around and be like, who's going to be competitive in this workout? This guy, they normally would, but they're out. Like you can tell, like the light's just out of their eyes. Like they're just not going to be there. And I think that's often why on the last day of competition, you see very similar names trading positions in the top 5. Like those are the people who have that little bit of extra. And that's just like, you've got that extra bit of adrenaline or whatever, because it feels closer. But I still like, is that justification to get them off the floor? Yeah. Like I just don't know if it is. And I think that again, if you're trying to develop athletes and create athletes who will then be in that position in a year or two, to keep not letting them even compete a full weekend, it just seems weird. And not to mention, like, the idea to me that suddenly at the games, it's super important that we cut athletes. It's just weird to me. Like, we don't do it at any other stage of the competition. Yeah, every filter we've gone through, you don't cut. And like you do after the competition, we filter down, but never in the middle of a competition are we cutting athletes. So suddenly it becomes like it's a super duper important thing that we do. It just feels weird. And I don't know if it, again, if budget. We're trying to, and that's the thing. There are other considerations, right? And I think that they're like, our staff are getting tired, and like judges are going to make more mistakes if we've got to run double the heats and this and that. And like, maybe. But I just think from a purely like sport development and improving the sport and competition perspective, I don't think that there's much of an argument for. I think it's just, if those guys, some guys start in 30th place and then in like 2 years they develop, 3 years they develop, they grow, and then they're top 10 athletes. But if you don't feel the effect of a full games weekend, you're never allowed to continue. It can be demoralizing and you can just chop people out. And then, you're going to end up with the same people rolling around in the top 10 until they retire. And then it's just like, it's a weird, you don't get the same storylines of people developing and contending. And I don't know. I think that I could name many reasons why I don't like them. And I can't name many reasons why I think that they're beneficial. So
do you think cuts specifically hinder the athletes that are 20 through 40 in terms of like partnerships, sponsorships, potential in the industry to support themselves?
Yes. Like, I think that any opportunity you have to spend more time on a competition floor, how many times a year do we compete generally?
Yeah.
5 if you're ambitious. Like, so visibility for sponsors is a big thing. That's frankly, there's not enough prize money or money in the sport right now. So that's how most athletes generate their living. So, if you can say, I improved from 30th to 20th, that can entice more sponsors. You can, and just more time on the competition floor. I think it benefits that stuff. It supports partnerships more. And again, I think Dave made a comment about being able to support their partners better by doing cuts. And I don't remember what how he was making that work, but
I don't remember that part of the argument.
I think he was saying that it's like they give more time for people to be out in Vellner Village if there's less time
there you go.
people are competing.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a very strong argument when you say it.
Yeah, I don't know. And there's like, that people have said, the first 2 heats, no one's watching anyways. Everybody gets up and goes pee and gets food. And again, I like from the athlete shoes on the floor perspective, I think if you polled those athletes and said, hey, look, you finished in 33rd place, you got cut, or like you're in a position where would you rather that we continue this competition, you get to keep going on the Coliseum floor and competing in front of a very sparse crowd, or would you rather just pack it in?
Oh,
what do you think the athletes are going to say? Yeah. Everybody's going to want to compete, right? Like, oh no, I could do better. I want another chance to whatever. Like people you don't fall over backwards and wind up on the games floor.
Yeah.
Like those people have worked for a long time to get there. And you earn your right to compete at the quarterfinals, you compete the quarterfinals. You earn your right to compete at the semifinals, you finish the semifinals. You earn your right to compete at the games, and then we just fucking get rid of you as soon as it's a little bit inconvenient. Like it just feels strange to me. And I think that there are arguments for and against. To me, the arguments for cuts are soft. And the arguments against, I think, just hold more water in terms of improving the competition and improving and pushing the sport forward. But like I said, one man's opinion.
I think that's a good segue into the specific topic we were talking about for today's show. And I think what I wanted to call the show.
Yeah.
Do you hope, in terms of programming prior to the first cut, do you think workouts like that are as important as maybe single modality specialist tests? Do you want to see a lot of balance between quote unquote small man and big man workouts? What does that look like for you?
I think it's important. And I think that, as much as we often try to ignore it, those are realities. Like there just are workouts where it's significantly more beneficial to be smaller or lighter or, different body types. And that's why at the games, a lot of the athletes are a very similar body type because it's filtered to people that are going to be successful in the big guy stuff and also the smaller guy stuff, right? So we have a few outliers, which makes it really fun. And that's part of what makes the sport fun to watch is you get to watch some of these outliers just absolutely smash the stuff when it comes across the plate. So I hope they'll do a decent job of balancing it. A lot of workouts have a pretty decent balance anyway. Mm-hmm. It'll tend to skew one way or the other. But even if you look at semifinals, workouts like the ruck one, it was more beneficial to be a little bit smaller based on how the finishes stacked up at the end. If you look at the top, 5 scores worldwide in that, there's just no denying it. Yeah. The burpee box jump over wasn't a big enough hindrance for the small guys. to overcome the big advantage they had on the rings and the pistols.
And the pistols,
in that time frame. So, you know, it is the way it is. Like, it was still, you got to be fit to do it. Like, there's no, and same thing with Linda, like guys that have small range of motion. Yeah, there's a lot of weight, but if you have small range of motion and you can pump those things out across that many rounds, it makes a huge difference, especially on the dumbbells.
Yeah.
But, you know, then you put those workouts like the long run, rope pull, whatever, like mass moves mass. And on those machines, especially, it's the same thing. Like, everybody, same argument, reverse direction. The top 5 scores worldwide, like the average weight's like 240 pounds or something like that, right? Like, people are just big, and there was no denying it. But across those 7 scores, it was okay. Right. I think we probably skewed a little large at semis this year because of how many machines were involved and heavy stuff. But, you know, the games is a little bit, as long as they balance on the first 2 days with a fair amount of, I don't know how, last year, I think, was kind of the first time that 2021 was the first time we did Coliseum before the weekend. But indoor events tend to skew small, and outdoor events tend to skew large at the games, I would say.
I felt like for a while, it seemed like the games were trending towards maybe a bit of a smaller demographic. And then you look at this year at semifinals. I mean, you're one of the bigger people in the field. I feel like it's interesting having met you in competition once, like, we're relatively the same height, and I do not consider myself a big person at all. But
yeah, right. Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think people think I'm bigger than I am.
No, you look across the field and you're like, where'd everybody go? Oh, and I'm 5'10", like 5'9" without shoes. But then you see guys like this year, like Yella Hoste. In Europe, huge guy. I mean, obviously you, Brent, Jason, do you feel like it's trending in one direction or another, or it's relatively balanced right now in terms of athletes in the field?
I think it you know, it waxes and wanes a little bit. Like years ago, 2012 ish, it was trending large.
Yeah.
Weights were getting really heavy, much heavier than they were to start. And then we kind of reversed direction around 2016, 17, maybe after 17, probably, where things got a little bit less heavy and a little bit more high volume, and a lot more high skill gymnastics.
Yeah.
And then now it's, you know, even then, I think 2017 was probably 2016, 17, we were starting to see a lot more strongman influence at the games. So as that happened, big bodies make a difference. And some of the athleticism events on the field, big bodies matter. So the more outdoor events there was starting to be a little more skew, but you got to get to the games, right? So that's why at the games, it's still going to be a certain body type that's prevalent, because a lot of the arena style workouts that we're doing at regionals, they don't have those elements a lot of the time. So then if you can get through that threshold, a guy like, you know, like Brent can go to the games and be super successful in stuff that's never tested earlier in the season. And it's a cool little card to have in your back pocket. But some of those bigger bodies are really good at those athleticism events, like, you know, and strongman stuff, moving implements, point to point. Those things matter a lot. So I think this year was the first time we've seen, last year's weird just because everybody did different stuff, right? So hard to really compare in the qualification stage. But this year was the first time, I think, at the qualification stage, we had very games-esque elements added in. There were like more than there has been in the past. Yeah, the heavy sled drag, even the ruck bag, stuff like that. That's like, those are things that we've in the past seen more at the games. And it's trickled down now to the semis. So I think we're starting to get that body type skew back up, where the people who are successful at those things are now just going to be the ones that are going to the games, instead of having to find a way to get to the games in order to find success with those elements later. So it's coming up a little bit. I saw some stats about what the heights and weights were recently. Somebody like Barbell Spinner, somebody posted it, and it's such a lie. There's like zero chance. It was saying there was like
when you guys checked in, why don't they just take weights? Just let that be part of your check-in. That way we can speak to it.
And then you know what? And then they should compare it against what you self-reported.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think it's really cool to be able to say something like, no, Cody Anderson is pound for pound the strongest CrossFit athlete if we base it on the squat clean pyramid. workout,
right.
whatever. Like, it's just cool to know those things. Hey, you know, Jason Hopper's got a 30-pound advantage on Will Morad, and they finished 1-2 in echo press. What does that say about the workout? Well, maybe it's not a small man's workout. Maybe it's just a good CrossFit workout. Like, those are stories that analysts can use to bolster arguments, or can like make people like idiots when before the workout they say, oh, this workout's all going to be about this type of athlete.
Right.
I mean?
It reminded me of my lacrosse days when I was like padding the program with everybody's 2 inches taller and 20 pounds heavier than they are on the floor. I was like, this is wild.
Do you think, JR, do you think it's
everyone does the opposite? Everyone wants to say that they're lighter, and they want to say that they're shorter. They don't want to say that they're heavier and taller.
What? People want to say they're shorter? I sure as fuck don't.
Well, that's what I'm like, oh yeah, there's 10 guys that are 6 foot plus that qualified. I don't believe it. Yeah, like right. I was standing at the Northwest, and I'm like who? Like Brent is, and out of our field, he'd be the only one. I think maybe Sam might be 6 feet. I think he's about my height.
5'11". Yeah, I thought
he's about 5'11". My height. So that was like, and like Gray Shaber, like I think he's about 5'11" too. Like I feel like Brent was the only one in my region, and then I'm like, you look at in the East, it was probably Jason and Roman probably.
Roman
Sprague. So we got like 4, and then Yella Huster probably is 5. Even if both the Brazilians we're at 7, and it's like
is Sharunki a big guy?
Sharunki would 8. I'm like, man, they're just like it was looking a little bit outrageous, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if the average height is now 6'1" and average weight is 220. It's like I just don't buy it. I was looking at the guys in my region, and it certainly wasn't the case there. So.
JR, do you think it's worth giving a couple examples of a quote unquote big man versus a small man workout? Paul Bunyan versus Wee Man?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I in a way, just because it's so relevant, like to semifinals. I mean, I imagine Pat is in the camp of when you add a ruck to anything, you're actually helping the bigger athlete in a gymnastics test. You're not making it harder for them, which is what a lot of people that maybe don't know the sport as well assume. Oh, well, that big guy's got to wear that pack back, or he's got to wear a vest. So the gymnastics are now going to be even way harder for them. But what they don't understand is what that
relative to your body weight,
relative, right? So let's say that workout is just 50 burpees for time with no ruck, and they add a couple complexes. Let's just say that for the sake of argument. Like, to me, you look at a workout like that and you say, okay, that workout is probably going to be won by a smaller statured, less range of motion.
I disagree.
Maybe a lighter athlete.
I actually think that workout would have been won by more of the big guys if that was what it was.
Really?
Because I think the small guys, they turned over the ring complex faster, and they also turned over the pistols significantly faster. So all the small guys were getting to the box with a 10 to 20 second cushion over guys. And then they were maybe faster on the box, but the height is significant. So like the last round, I was moving a lot faster than both Tetlow and Mertens were. And I made up a lot of ground on the box in the last rounds, and I could do like a step down off the box where they couldn't do that. I think that the advantage, all the small guys won that workout, Yanakuski, the top 5 scorers were all quite small. And I don't think it was because of the box. I think it was because of the muscle ups and the pistols, probably mostly the pistols.
Okay. So Taylor, like for me, there are movements that kind of muddy the water. Like, let's just say running on a runner.
Big man.
If you guys do those 2 back-to-back workouts as shuttles, does it skew it? Does it skew it? Does it make it more balanced? Does it make it, like, specifically the second part of it that you did so well on? I'm in the camp of, if you have good capacity and you're not a terrible runner, the load that you can put into that belt, pulling that thing, is going to help you beat someone like James Sprague. Although when you guys run outside, it might not be. I think
running
shuttle's also a very different running type.
It is.
If you're smaller and the shuttle distance is shorter, you're going to crush people who are bigger. Because you just to hit the brakes and turn around all that momentum when you weigh a lot, it'll blow your legs out really fast. So
I think
a shuttle run would have been much more beneficial for a smaller athlete. The longer you made the shuttle, that difference would start to decrease.
Yep.
But the runner for sure benefits the big guys. There's no question.
If it's an 800-meter run on a track versus the runner, I think the big guy has more of an advantage on the runner because you can carry momentum a lot on it.
Sure.
For me, I can relax and run quite a bit faster on a runner than on a track.
Yeah, and Taylor, I'm sorry for derailing your question. I completely just went in another direction.
No, you're good.
Celebrate 10. That's an easy one, right?
Yeah.
Like celebrate.
I was going to say that's my example, a perfect example for a small guy workout.
Colton, smashing it.
And it's always like stuff that had a lot of gymnastics, which has a body weight component to it, and the weightlifting component to it was very cycle rate dependent.
Yeah.
Right. So Colton, like I remember before we even did the event, I congratulated him, being like, "I'll fucking wait for me at the finish line."
I remember you saying that.
Don't mind. And he's great, right? He's like, I think he kind of knows when he's got a good pitch coming, and he's very humble about it. But he's like, "Oh, we'll see." And then I think he beat second place by 2 minutes.
2 minutes
in a 10-minute workout or something like that, right? Like, just it's ridiculous. And and there's just nothing you can do. Like those sort of things. If I'm sitting next to him and I'm squatting the same speed as him, he'll finish 3 reps ahead every time. It's just like you just have to not watch.
What do you think about?
Would you guys say that Echo Fran was the other end of the spectrum at that competition?
I thought the flip side was probably more big man dependent.
Yeah, okay. I would agree with that. Echo, because
and you guys are 1-2, and you guys are both talking about how you're not one of the biggest guys
in that field. Maybe. But
the thruster and chest to bar were just too big of a component in the Echo bike one. Like
you have to be
moving the 135 thruster was a big piece of it. And if that's significantly easier for you, or you're moving it at double the speed, then all of a sudden you bought yourself a slower bike, and that feels really nice. But I would say the flip side one maybe because every piece was weighted as well. Like the weighted med ball and But
and just leverage on that apparatus. It just like Scott and Colton are just gonna like as good as they may be at flipping something, like eventually like being farther away from it, kind of like
being taller on those sleds makes a big difference, right? Just because of the angle where you feel the weight. But even that, like that year at Wodapalooza, the swim workout we did was heavy on machines, right?
Yeah.
It was like if you needed to be aerobic and you needed to be able to swim decently well, but if you could do those two things, the bigger athlete would have an advantage over the smaller one because we used the runner and we used the rower, and then we only swam like a 250 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Taylor, who was third on that? It was you, James, and Dallin. Was Dallin third? Who was third?
No,
maybe Hopper.
No, it was Matt Poulin.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And then I feel like Vino or somebody was in there. Was he there that year? Maybe not. But Hopper, Dallin, like it was a bunch of those guys were in at the end there.
Carone, I thought. Did Carone do well? He was there. I thought he did.
I think he took a hit on that one.
Oh, really? Okay.
On that one.
Yeah, like I don't know if you spoke to. Actually, I think Colton gave some pretty cool insight. He went on Sevon's show not too long ago, and they were asking him about the finale and the semifinal workout, and how everybody was like, "Oh well, once again, it's a power athlete test because." The toast bar being the number that they were and maybe not 30, like they kind of took out the like strategy there. Like, well, if Pat can hold on for 3 sets of 30 versus holding on for 3 sets of 20, it makes a big difference. The sandbag was kind of negligent. It's just going to come down to the bike. And Colton was like, yeah, what's funny is that these workouts come out and they're like, oh, well, that's a big guy workout. And then if I do well, it's no longer a big guy workout that I'm just better at the big guys on. It's just like, well, no, maybe it's not a big guy workout anymore.
That's a big guy workout for sure. He said it. Yeah. That's where this topic
there's just from. Like there's a cutoff point in that workout. So I actually did that one in testing, and I biked slower than in competition. I biked like 85 to 88 RPM. My goal was just like bike above 85. But I did all rounds of toes to bar unbroken and pretty fast. And was very quick on the bag, and ended up putting me like a I don't know what, like 420 some or low 420s time. And then in competition, I was like, I'm gonna bike 90 RPM, like I'm gonna ramp it up significantly more. And I was not able to hold on to the last set of toes to bar because you just get way more lactic and you're like just a little more beat up. My last bag was quite a bit slower. And I ended up being like, it was like 410 or 411 or something like that. So, or no, maybe 409. I don't know. I was like around that 410 mark. So not and like a time like I did in training, which like Colton could do what I did in training, and he probably did. And it's not a bad strategy. It just means like you don't gas the bike quite as much, but then you feel way better on the toes to bar. You can snap them out quicker, but there's a cost. Like you can't, if you bike at that like 90 plus range or like way faster, then suddenly you're a little heavier, your legs are a little heavier on those toes to bar, like you're a little bit slower. There's some risk in that breakdown of that last round. And it's worth it. Like, what we saw in the East with 4 guys going under 4 minutes, all of them broke the last set of toes to bar, but it didn't matter. Mm-hmm. So like, I think that if you're a big enough guy to push the bike that hard, manage the first 2 rounds, scramble at the very end, and just get the bag in, that was the best strategy to be successful.
So big guy,
I have the capacity on the bike. If you didn't have the capacity on the bike because you're a bit smaller, you could 100% get away with going 5 to 10 RPM less than some of the big heavy hitters were on the bike and have a great score. Like be in the mix of like that 420 to 430 range where you're in a lot of regions that'd be putting you in like a 6th, 7th, 8th place kind of a position. And so that's just like, I think that as a smaller guy, you weren't going to crank up top 3 probably in that one, but you could definitely manage it in a way that could put you in the top 10.
So you think more of a balanced workout?
I think it was more balanced than people gave it credit for on, and I think it's trap, right? Like the problem is everybody looks at it and goes, oh, it's a big guy workout. I got to bike really hard. And if you don't have the capacity to bike really hard, now you're like, you've buried yourself in the second round and you get to that last bike and now you can't bike fast and you can't hold on to your toes to bar. But if you're like I think Colton just had the composure to be like, I'm not going to be a hero on the bike. And he biked at like a hard but sustainable pace that allowed him to just move really fast everywhere else. And there's a lot of time. Like if you're running with the bag even versus like waddling, like my last carry, I was like waddling with the bag and it was probably 4 seconds slower just to carry the bag 50 feet or 60 feet or whatever it was. So like, I think that there's, and like again, Colton's a bit of an outlier himself, right? Like I think he's he's better at the machine power output thing than most people his size. So I think he just managed it well. Like he made good decisions for him. But do I think that a guy his size could win that workout? No. Hence it being a big guy workout. Like
from a programming standpoint, specifically at the games or just any competition where let's just say there's like more than 7 or 8 events, do you like it where you see a workout and think, okay, cool, that one's probably for the smaller, more gymnastic guy. Okay, cool, this one's probably for the power athlete. Okay, cool, this one's just fitness. A little bit of both, could go either way. Or would you like it better if all the workouts were like the big guy's mad and the little guy's mad for different reasons? Like, do you like that there are specific workouts that do maybe bias toward a type of athlete that then get offset because you see a lot of like leaderboard shifts and stuff like that? Or would you rather see more workouts maybe like that finale?
So this is where the cuts thing kind of makes a difference now, right? Is I think that I'm definitely guilty of trying to look at every workout in a silo and being like, well, this is clearly skewed this way, like it's a bad workout, which isn't the case. If you can zoom out and say, oh, we have 15 workouts to do. This one fits over here. These ones fit over here. And those ones are going to balance each other out as long as you get to do both of them. And that's the problem with the cuts, right? So I think that that's where it becomes a little more nuanced. But I would say my bias is I'm very guilty of wanting everything to have like a good flow to it in a single workout and being like, oh, well, here's a piece of this workout that's going to benefit a certain athlete's phenotype. And then this part's where they're going to stumble, but that's going to benefit the other guys. Like, oh, these guys are going to crush the ring muscle ups, but now over here, we've got to do heavy walking lunges. And like, oh, that's going to be like more of a flip of like the big guys are going to have an advantage there and whatever. Right. And so I like to see that, but it's not necessary as long as you have a full balanced overall test. Like, every now and then you're going to take a hit, and the people who are really good, taking a hit maybe means only 10th, but then the stuff that they're really great at, they are taking top 3s, and then that's how you win the games. But I think that as long as you have an offset for those things when they do come up, like if we're going to run a 1 mile time trial on a assault runner, you better offset that with something that the small guys are going to crush or whatever, right? Or that's very high skill in some sense where that's going to at some point balance those things out at least a little bit. So yeah, I think that it's important to have those things in mind when you're programming a full competition. And in this case, you know, JR, you kind of said it's almost like 3 mini competitions. And so that's where you might have to be paying attention to that. Like if you are going to have, say on Saturday, you're cutting from 30 to 20, and Saturday is going to have one piece that heavily skews one direction, you should hope that in that same day, we've also got something that's going to pull the pendulum back a little bit. So you don't just do like, even if it's like 3 tests on Saturday and 2 of them are really heavy and one of them's like, you know, neutral, like that's a pretty big skew for a certain type of athlete, right? So hopefully we see some of that, but those are the things to keep in mind. Not everything needs to be perfect within the one workout, but it should be, everything's going to move the needle one way or the other, and you should hope that at the end it's close to the middle.
I've heard Dave say before that he doesn't look at big man, little man when programming. Question 1, do you believe that? 2, do you think the games team in general takes that into consideration when programming, or do you think they just try to rely on variants of modality and movement variations and patterns? Do they look at big guy, little guy?
Probably not in those terms, or at least they may not admit it, but I think that there's ways to still analyze those things and just use different language. Like, I think that being like, this is a heavy workout, this is a light workout, this is a gymnastics workout, this is a weightlifting workout, which I think tends to be the language they use, right? That might be like, oh, weightlifting, gymnastics, monostructural, and whatever. And I think that those terms are loosely applied in a lot of cases, but you know, like I wouldn't call a wall ball a weightlifting movement, but I believe that they do. But, you know, I think that when you look at those things, it's hard to ignore certain trends. Like if you're programming and then you're like, hey, you know, 4 out of 6 of these are like heavy. Okay. Like you notice that stuff. So I think that you would just be like, oh, we're skewing heavy. We got to add in some light stuff or like some quick stuff. And, you know, I think that overall, honestly, I think that the games has done a pretty good job of that in the last bunch of years. I don't think when I look at the overall set of workouts for the whole weekend, I've very often looked at it and been like, oh, this is extremely skewed one direction or the other. You know, the questions of years like 2019, where they cut a lot of people at different stages. Then you're making checkpoints and you're looking back from the checkpoint and you're like, well, yeah, before this, there was like all one style. And then this was like all one style. And that changes the view. But if you look at the whole weekend of that, it actually was a pretty good set of workouts.
What's your favorite year of games programming?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I think 2016 was pretty fun. I'm only gonna go to years I competed in, because I don't I wouldn't say I was paying that close attention if I wasn't competing. 16 I think was really fun. 18 was really fun. 21 was pretty fun. I liked 2020. Like I watched some of that when they did the 5-person one. The only one I didn't like was the trail run.
Yeah, the out and back.
I thought it was the only one that was out of place. Other than that whole set of workouts I really liked, and not including stage 1. I think stage 1 was terrible. I think it was a last minute throw together. And what we saw with the 5 people was the initial plan for what the games was going to be. And then stage 1 was like a panic, like we got to do something to filter this thing. And they threw it together super fast and it was really bad. But I think like every workout but one was like 5 minutes long or shorter. It was just like, it was super weird. But I think that the full games of 2020 was really cool too. I just didn't like the twist of the trail run. I thought it was nonsense.
Stupid how they didn't tell them prior to, and then
I just think it rewards the wrong thing. Basically, it's like if I say, hey Taylor, like go run your best 5K. And if you do that, you've got no gas in the tank. You did exactly what you were asked to do and you nailed it. And then at the end I go, just kidding. Run another one. Like, so let's say if you put this in a different context, it sounds even stupider. Let's say I go, okay, Taylor, 1 rep max front squat. And then as soon as you stand up the bar, shaking, barely got it up, I go, whoa, wait, 1 more.
Yeah, it is. Damn.
So like,
I've never thought of it like that. And that's
the person who executed the objective the poorest and came in super fresh around that first lap is then disproportionately rewarded overall with points, which is just insane to me. I was like, that's like, I get the like drama of the twist, but from a test perspective and a programming perspective, it doesn't reflect properly. It's like, and in that year, I think, Tia, for the men, it didn't matter as much, but Tia had won the first half for the women. And then I think Katrin came out of like third and ended up winning the 10K because she just like paced the 5K. Like what? Like she went from being literally middle of the pack to winning because of a twist like that. I just like that one. I didn't sit well with me, but the rest of it was great. I actually think that year, that was one I was sad to miss. So that's one I really liked.
Talking about like knowing things last minute. I mean, just last year, Boz really wasn't the kind of guy to like put out teasers. Like Dave used to kind of put out some teasers or maybe put out some incomplete notepad scribblings where you had like the movements, like I think the sandbag, ski, rope climb year. There's like, you kind of knew some stuff. He had that guy announce the pig workout one year, right? It was like that, to kind of give some hints, to kind of create some excitement. Boz seems like, and I mean, he's even said a lot in really, really old videos. Like, I'll wait until the Metcon for the class before I told my classes what the workout was going to be. Like, I'll wait as long as I can possibly wait. Are you in the camp of like, I'm a real athlete, that's even better for me? Or would you like more heads up than less?
I would like less. I think it's good for generating excitement to give something, and I think there's other ways you can do it other than programming, but for a couple reasons. One, I tend to do well at unknown elements when people have less time to practice, and I'm a pretty good first try guy. And the other thing is I'll ruminate. Like if I know kind of what's going on, whether it's partial details or full details, whether I've practiced it or not, I'll just I think about it too much. And if I don't know it, I can't think about it. I sleep better at night. It's no problem. But if I know, I tend to kind of analyze every aspect of it and probably overanalyze it a little bit. And I've been fine both ways. Like I've been very successful in events and weekends where we know very little. And I've also done well in ones where we have all the details. So I don't think it matters a ton performance wise. But personally, I would prefer less just because I think it kind of makes it exciting and there's some drama there. And I think that I'm a better athlete than a lot of the guys that are there at figuring that stuff out on the fly. I have a very diverse athletic background, which I think benefits me a lot.
For sure. Like to me, and I asked this question to Taylor maybe a month or so ago, and we were talking about the way that strength is traditionally tested and what they've kind of always done in CrossFit, and just thinking about ways that you could test the same thing just in non-traditional methods, and being like, hey, Taylor, which one's more important? A 1 rep max power clean or a max vertical jump? And he thought about it and he was like, you know what? Like both of them show an extreme amount of explosive
power generation,
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's like you can wait until 30 minutes before to tell them that. They don't know what they can hit. They have no clue, a technique. They haven't had time to work with a plyometrics guru or whatever. Just in the same capacity as if you were like, all right, guys, we're going to do a 1 rep max power clean. Just got to catch above parallel. That's all you got to do. Okay, cool. Well, I know what I can hit. Maybe I'll have some juice. No problem. Like, I think things like that, like a standing triple jump, right? They did a standing broad jump one year. Okay, cool. Well, as soon as your feet land, you have to leave again. And then as soon as your feet land again, there can be no foot movement at all. And it's going to be total distance over 3 jumps. And we're not going to do a traditional barbell test. And people are like, oh, that's not, weightlifting's on the pyramid with throwing and jumping isn't on there and ever. But like, to me, that kind of unknown and unknowable stuff is perfect for the games. Now,
and even like you just said, right next to throwing,
might be good to know. Might be good to know a couple days before. And
I think when there's equipment considerations, it makes a difference. Right. But
yeah.
So here's the biggest problem with that is we're trying to generate a spectator sport, right? So there are certain things that are more visually appealing. So it would be trying to find ways to make a vertical jump or a standing broad jump super enticing. But I mean, is there ways to make it work? But the point being, are there other ways to test strength or to test explosiveness or power? Yeah, there are. We get used to doing certain kinds. I think actually what like Boz last year was pretty good at coming up with some different looks to test things that we've been testing in the past. And, you know, some of it was met with criticism, but I think it was fun to have a different look to things and to do so many new things in a year. Like in a normal year, we're maybe doing one new thing. So it's kind of cool to have a few different things pop up and just see how people behave with it. So I like stuff like that. I would love to, and I admittedly do a lot less of it these days. Actual athleticism drills. I feel like I only do a lot of plyometric agility stuff, basically post semifinals time, for like a couple months pre-games. I don't really do a lot of jump training anymore. So, you know, I think it would catch a lot of people off guard. And it's a fun style of training. Like,
well, you know, I mean, you still, I mean, you know, some things you've done so many times, and like Taylor can speak to this also. Like, I think about the Wodapalooza workout, you know, with the hurdle hops, and how some people just look like athletes, like they had done stuff like that before with hard running, and some people had to pause on the ground. And recently on main site, you know, they posted that sumo deadlift high pull lateral jump over a 24-inch object, and you just had to clear it back and forth. It's like, okay, cool. Well, that is a jumping in a way that most people don't train it, that does blow up your legs, but also shows a little bit more explosiveness, athleticism, coordination, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of hope that it's not just like, oh yeah, there's this box, that's what we used to jump, that's it, that and this jump rope, and that's it, you know. And I think up and over was such a overlooked workout, because that was cool. Like, you did a get over with hands, then you did a high box jump onto and over, then you cleared the pig. So it was at least just some more athleticism mixed in with some traditional CrossFit.
For sure. Taylor, did you have something to add there?
No, I was gonna ask if you didn't like the fact that last year they didn't have any kind of burpee at the games.
I hadn't even really considered that, dude.
I'm hung up on that so hard.
Is that the first time?
Man, I think so. JR?
I don't think that's right, but
I think there's one other year.
Give me a few minutes.
I think there's one other year.
Oh, maybe we could figure it out probably pretty soon.
Will,
did we do any in 2021?
I don't think so, man.
Yeah. 2021 they had the yoke workout with the burpee get overs, right? Was that 21?
That was burpee sandbag over.
That was burpee over
it was a burpee too, though. Hey, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I care that much, but I don't mind. I usually do pretty well in burpee workouts. I
love burpees.
Maybe it would have helped me out a little bit, but I would have taken it. I don't know. I think that the reality is you're always going to miss things, right? There's only so much testing that you can do, and there's only so many events you can run before we're not going to do 20. So I think it's just, sometimes you got to miss a few things. I don't like when there's things that get missed. See, again, this is my like OCD around wanting things to be perfect. I hate when we miss certain things, but then there's things that get repeated.
Yeah.
So that always bothers me. Like 2021, we did a 1 rep max snatch, and we did the snatch and the echo bike, and extremely different. But and I haven't really thought about it, but if there's things that we like that are very normal that we would have missed to make space to snatch twice, it would bug me. Or the run clean, where we ran and cleaned heavy twice.
Yeah.
And then if we had made space to run and clean heavy twice by skipping a super, not having any double unders or something, something that's very common, I would sort of it would sit in the back of my head funny and make me feel weird about it. But again, everything's not perfect, and as long as you're testing skill sets and things like that, I think it's fine. It doesn't need to be everything all the time.
And what do you think about the format? This is another question I had. Hat trick from last year, where it was that 1 round for time, wall ball, dumbbell snatch, sprint to finish, rest an hour, repeat.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't like it initially. I didn't really get it. I felt like it was just, the rest was too long. It was if whoever's the fastest in the first one is just going to continue to be the fastest. I don't know, like I reflected on it a bit, and I think that the risk is then what becomes the biggest factor is like, okay, have I got to try to like really blast out of the bottom of the squat, maybe get close on depth? Like I can't just like float through the bottom of this squat. I got to try to hit the bottom of this wall ball target to shave time across 20 seconds for this 12-foot target. Like you need to try to find ways to move a little faster. And then if you cut it too close and you miss one, that's a huge hit. So it becomes an execution test, and like who can go 3 for 3 on execution. And then for the most part, anybody who is 3 for 3 for execution is going to be in one pile. And then people who had one mistake is going to be in another pile. People who had 2 mistakes will be in another pile up. So I'm okay with that. I don't mind high execution value workouts. The one thing I didn't like is I felt like the judging was not consistent on that one.
Okay.
And we were told in the warm-up area that initially we were told that you were allowed to just like drop your dumbbell. Somebody asked, they're like, yeah, just drop your dumbbell from overhead. And then people were like, well, that's kind of sketchy. We're pretty close. And they'll like cartwheel. And if the guy in front of me has just dropped a 100-pound dumbbell and it's flying into my ankle as I'm like pulling a squat snatch, that's not very cool. And they're like, huh, they did a little powwow and they're like, yeah, good point. So what we're going to have you do is you have to come down and like throw it between your legs. So you're releasing when it's like up below your hip basically. And then you're just like stepping through. So they said that. And then on the floor, all the fastest people were just dumping it straight from overhead to the side, like right into Buddy's lane. And it was just like, man, come on. Like, and you see it happen, but I don't know what the judges have been told. So I want to do that, but I'm not gonna, because if I get no rep on a fucking dumbbell squat snatch and I've got to go now run backwards, pick up the dumbbell again, do another dumbbell squat snatch, that's a death sentence.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm going to take the extra 1 second or half second per rep, but now you're doing that across your 6 squat snatches for each round. And it's going to cost you 5 seconds in your overall time. And, other guys are just getting away with murder out there. It's super annoying, but that was one thing that stuck with me from that workout. And that's just, floor inconsistencies, and we don't know. You can ask all the questions, but you don't know what the judges get told. And you just have to like I said, it was too risky for me. I was not willing to take the risk to get the no rep that could just like totally sink your event. And I could have like bumped me up to like a 5th place finish or something. I think I finished like 8th or 9th or something in that one, but might have bumped me up to like close to 5th, but could have sunk me down to like 20th. So I was like, what are you going to do? But I think there's room for those types of events. I think we did a lot of them last year was one of the parts where there was some criticism. Like shuttle to overhead was very similar in terms of execution value. And so was the pegboard. The pegboard pistol workout, right? Medley. So I think those were all, shuttle overhead less so than the other one, probably just because the rest was less. But where you had some rest and you were testing intervals and execution mattered a lot.
Would you put back 9 into that? Just because if you go for that first front squat a little early and you miss that clean, that's 10 or 15 seconds. And in that workout, that's crazy expensive. Or would you not really put that in the execution category?
I mean, those other ones are all intervals. So I was kind of putting them in a different category because of that. Back 9, yeah, I guess. Yeah. But it was like a sprint. It was short. So we had quite a few tests that were determined based off sprint efforts that were high risk, high execution. So, there was probably 5 overall in the weekend. 4 or 5.
Four intervals, right? Counting that with the swim, right? 4 interval tests out of that's a lot.
And then back 9 being like a 3-minute workout. So a lot of very fast, high execution style events. Which nothing wrong with that. That's kind of a way to keep the sport interesting too. If you just kind of know who's fitter and mistakes don't matter because they get washed away. If you got 1,000 reps in a workout and I make a mistake here or there, but I'm just fitter than everybody else, those mistakes wash away. But it's like having a significant time penalty per mistake where, you see someone even as dominant as Tia, you miss a few single unders and then you're eliminated and suddenly like, oh, I just took a 30th, like shit. So it can make the overall competition a little more exciting. So I think athletes get frustrated because you want your score and your points to be a perfect reflection of how fit you are, or how fit you feel you are. And it's just not the case, but that's the same in every sport. And I think that we've kind of gotten a little too used to that. So it's just a different look where like, look, man, you could be the best team on the field 364 days a year, but like everybody loves an underdog story. And if you mess up on a couple of easy routine things because you're not paying attention or your focus is elsewhere, you know, it opens the door for other people. So I think that there is some value to that. And, you know, you ask me after I've made the mistake and I'll hate it. But if you ask me, like, you know, I've had a little bit of time to get clear headed about it. Yeah. I think that it's a great thing to have as part of a sport. It keeps things exciting and interesting.
Right.
But I think that there's room. I think that we could, like last year was maybe slightly an overcorrection, and maybe we can, I don't know. Again,
some, but not too much. Do you think the games team is going to trend more towards have you witnessed, at least over the past year since Boz has been at the helm, and then now Dave being back as director of sport or general manager of sport or head of sport? Do you see them? It seemed like to me in the past they weren't very receptive to athlete feedback or feedback in general from the community. That could be wrong. It could be just my limited perception. So I guess that's the first question. Second, do you think that'll improve, or has it improved?
I think that has been the perception for sure overall. I don't think that's just you for a long time. And I think it is improving. I think that it's taking time. And I think, you know, that's part of the work we're trying to do with the PFAA is even just creating actual information and data, like surveying large bodies of coaches, athletes after every major competition for things, not even events that CrossFit Games is running, just like, hey, you were at the French Throwdown. Was there anything really awesome that they did that you thought more events should be doing this? This seems like a no-brainer now that I've seen it. Anything that was really crazy that you wish nobody ever did again? And can we compile some of this information to make, you know, just create a list of items that we can say, hey, CrossFit Games, here's things that generally everybody loves in competition. Here's things that generally people are like, they don't really like to see. Can we trend towards a better competition as far as execution, athlete experience, fairness, all these things, just creating tangible targets and having conversations with them. Like, not everything's doable all the time. And I think that's I think that CrossFit Games in the past, the reason maybe they've looked or people have felt like they're very non-receptive is I do think they have a tendency to be a bit defensive. And right after the game's finished, they're like, everybody, I get it. Like, you just poured your heart and soul into something, got super, I feel the same fucking way. Like, I hop off the floor and somebody says, geez, you know, you really looked like you were standing around out there. I'm like, dude, get out of my face. Like, I don't want to hear it right now. We just I tried my best, whatever. So I think it's good to create it, gather information, try to generate feedback, let there be a little bit of a time delay. And then in the off season say like, hey, like, here are some things that have been routinely causing problems. Is there a better way that we can calibrate running machines? Is there a better way that we can choose what sleds to use? Like, are there better ways to do this and that? Like, this year, I think also one of the problems nowadays actually is that every issue and mistake is highlighted in a massive way because everybody's got a YouTube station that they're just blasting people on. But so I don't think that they've, you know, made more mistakes than in the past, but every time they make one, it just gets like waved around in everyone's face. So this year there was lots of little things, from like mixing up the weights at the open announcement to like the runners and the sleds at semifinals and this and that. But they've also been doing some really great things that I think they deserve to be praised for. Like, when we did that running snatch workout, there were warm-up bars right next to the floor that people could continue to stay warm on until right before we took the floor. Instead of having like, our corral time would have been like 30 minutes between touching your last heavy barbell to getting on an 800-meter run and then having to snatch heavy in like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So that was really awesome. And we were like, man, we've been begging competition fields to do this everywhere. And like, this was perfect. They're just like, it's right behind the grandstands, hang over there. When we have like a 1 minute warning, we're going to grab you guys and reline you up. And we're like, this is just like beauty. So there's stuff like that they're like, you know, they've been learning and collecting information and trying to make things better where they can. But I think that our hope is that they'll be receptive to organized information. I think it's hard when you're just being accused and criticized openly on platforms, that sucks. And everybody, I don't care who you are, you'll get defensive. So our hope is like, that's why we're trying to be a little more diplomatic maybe about it. Let there be some time post events when everybody's emotions are raw, get the information and survey athletes, be like, hey, I see you're pissed off. Why are you pissed off? What did you hate the most? And then, you know, we can categorize all that information, put it into boxes and say, like, it seems like these are the themes of things that are bothering coaches. These are the themes of things that are bothering athletes. Like, are the ways we can improve this that's not going to affect, you know, super adversely affect the way the competition runs, the timing, the spectator experience, whatever, because there is a lot of balls to keep in the air. But our feeling as the athletes, of course, is that better conditions for athletes and coaches and things like that is going to help to drive the sport forward. Nobody wants to keep competing in a sport where they're just getting kicked in the face every 5 minutes. So if we create a situation where athletes are feeling supported, you know, the event cares about them, their needs are being met, the things aren't being dangerously run or reckless, then and they feel like it's fair, they're going to keep showing up. And then you're going to have your top athletes surviving for 10-year careers and things like that. Like, to me, honestly, it's pretty wild, even up to the sport's young, but like, what if we have like Cole and BK and Noah this year as like some of the few guys ever to run a 10-year career? Like, that's pretty wild. Yeah. Like, we should hope that we have more people who can survive for 10 years. So let's make that more doable, right? Anyway, so we're hoping like the diplomatic approach is going to help a lot and make them a little more receptive to that stuff. But yeah, it's tough. I think that sometimes you just get met with resistance because it's defensive-ness and a knee jerk, and just try to like, it feels funny. If you guys have played team sports, like, you know, sometimes you have to give people feedback that's like, you know, compliment sandwich, or you have to like massage them in a way that makes them feel like it was their idea. It sometimes feels like that, like we're like, hey, look, like, no, not trying to get in your face at all about this, but like, we were just kind of thinking, you know, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if this or that? And if we can present it in a way that doesn't feel like an overt attack of like, you should be doing this, no, that's how we're going to make improvements. So I think that there's already enough of the attacking going on, like I said, through YouTube and stuff. So we're trying to be understanding of everything that they need to balance to make this whole thing work, and just be like, hey, there are other ways we can fit some of these other things in. And they've done some of it. Like, the bars were a great addition. You know, coach access in the last couple of years at the games has been much better. Like, people might not know, but for the last bunch of years in Madison, coaches weren't allowed to go to the North Field warm-up area at all. They would send the athletes out there with their bags and be like, okay, coaches stay here. Athletes, you're going to go warm up there, and then you're going to compete. Like, you might be there for an hour or more, depending on your heat, and coaches just weren't allowed to go. And now they are. And that was because we were like, hey, why is this? Is it just like a space thing? Can we set aside an area for coaches to come? It would be really helpful. And so they've allowed that to change. So I think that sometimes it's just you don't see things because it's not in your direct line of sight and you're focused on 1,000 different things. So that's the hope, is we can just draw some attention to little areas and be like, hey, did you ever notice this? And people will be like, no, actually, no. Like, okay, well, maybe have a look at this and see what you think. And sometimes the solutions are pretty obvious, and it's just that nobody's really shined a light on it yet.
Dope. JR, anything else? We typically cap ourselves at 45 minutes, but we've had a good talk.
Ooh. We had a good flow, yeah. So no, that's it, man.
Well, so do we have a conclusion on size mattering
for CrossFit?
Yeah. smaller the better, or what?
There you go, dude. Smaller the better. I don't know. I think over the I
think until someone's 6 foot or taller wins the CrossFit Games, you're gonna say that like it's more beneficial to be smaller than the average than it is to be taller than the average.
5'8" maybe.
I think that in the last, what do you think has been happening with the trends of size for athletes, average size?
I think this year it's trending bigger.
That they're getting bigger.
Yeah. I think it's getting bigger.
I'd say that overall height and weight has been getting higher for sure for the men.
Sure.
I pay less attention to the women's field just because I'm actively competing in the men's field. But I think that like right now, that's how it looks, and to maintain the balance of skills that we need to. Size is getting up there. We're getting more people that are around 6 feet, maybe a little more, and heavier for sure. And people that can still do that and still, do the gymnastics and run and all the stuff fine. So, but I will say there are certain instances where you can't beat size. I line up on the start line to a lot of events, and I know exactly who I cannot beat based on what the test is in front of me and who's standing next to me. And the best you can hope for is to stay close.
And the fact of the matter is there are more of those tests in every competition where you're the athletes that are smaller than you versus you saying that to yourselves that the athlete's bigger than you.
Probably, yeah. And that's just because we're turning over a lot of reps, I think. So range of motion ends up mattering more, especially in other competitions, like the games where you are covering distance in a lot of different events, more so than in other competitions. That's where being bigger matters more. But yeah, I would say it's nice to shave I wouldn't mind shaving a couple inches off these arms, I'm not playing real sports anymore, like traditional sports. It was nice when I had to like reach to guard a defender or something, but I don't have to do that anymore. Now they just hang out and flap in the breeze.
All right, I got to run to the gym. I got to coach.
All right, buddy.
Thank you, Pat, for coming on, dude.
Appreciate it.